Welcome to Truth Be Told. I am your host, Pierre Casongo. Tonight, I have, once again, a very special guest. He is a leader in the arts and culture sector and broadcasting industry. With more than 20 years of experience working in several cities and provinces, he has become an advocate for the importance of feeling uniquely Canadian, telling uniquely Canadian cultural stories in a variety of media. He is currently working on completing his MBA in community economic development and has a passion for community building. Fellow listeners and viewers, it is my pleasure to welcome Marc Carnes. Marc, welcome to Truth Be Told.
Thanks, Pierre. Nice to be here.
Yeah. So, I have to start with this funny anecdote that you once said. You wanted to be a dinosaur when you were a kid.
Still do.
Yeah. One thing about that, like now you kind of you say, say as a kid, kids have a lot of imagination. So in a way, I guess you could say, do you still feel that you still have that big imagination that still the kids still do?
Yeah, I think it depends on the day. Some days are really tough and very, very adulty, where I've got to do, big things and think in very sort of, very linear ways. But I think on the times when I'm a little less stressed or a little less focused, and when my mind's allowed to shift and to kind of wander, I think I kind of go back to that child state. I try to find humor in things and find weirdness in things and tell really bad dad jokes. And I think those are all kind of things that I think the kids do in a weird way. So, I think, I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years trying to sort of recapture some of that innocence. I think, the world got really intense and really tough and really dark for a lot of people, and me included. And so, trying to find ways to sort of get back to that, sort of look at the world through different lenses is pretty important. So I think sometimes I still think I'm a kid at heart and still love dinosaurs. I'm actually wearing dinosaur socks right now.
Wait a second. You are a fan of funky socks too?
Oh yeah. I'm
No way.
I'm taking this off right now. I'm gonna take this off. I'm
No
gonna show
way.
you. So I got dinosaur socks right there.
Yes. A man after my heart.
There you go.
Kudos to you. Yes. Hey, that is a way to be authentic, man.
That's
I like
right.
that. That is amazing. I love that. And you know what? It's and the whole thing about dinosaurs is somehow it can be a bit of a term of endearment, because dinosaurs are kind of old school, because dinosaur, like the old school stuff, like things from the past that were just so cool. Because sometimes I sometimes see on the internet, like like kids from like that are maybe like Gen Z that will be watching or listening to music from years ago, and they're thinking, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" Like they'll be born in like 1997, and they'll be watching a video by the Commodores, and they're thinking, like, how did we not know these guys?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, it's really, there's a lot of data out there right now with sort of the younger generation. Like they are, I think our generation was the mixtape generation, right? Like you have 90 minutes to put on your, your 9 favorite songs or whatever it was. But this generation now, like with whether you like Spotify or not, one of the amazing things about something like Spotify is that you can create playlists and you can discover and you can go wherever you want. So there's this younger generation who are discovering classic rock, discovering funk, discovering soul from back in the day that um wouldn't have happened if we didn't have something like a Spotify or a YouTube Music or something like that. So it's an interesting time because I think as much as we love the new and the fresh and the funky and all that stuff, there's still this element of appreciating the old school and where it comes from. And I think that's kind of true no matter through the history of time, but I think it's particularly kind of unique right now because you can open up somebody's playlist and it'll have the Commodores, and then it'll have like Pat Benatar, and then it'll have somebody from new music to everything in between. It's all over the place, and that's kind of what kind of makes music so cool, is it's kind of timeless.
Absolutely. For me, I'm like, I like rap and hip hop music, but for me, I feel that I must also listen to like R&B and soul music, because if it wasn't for that music, there would be none of that genre would exist. All these producers sample a lot from previous artists, like all the jazz artists and from the past. From the Isley Brothers, from Earth, Wind and Fire, from Sonny Rollins, Art and the Pepper. Many hip hop artists sample from artists from the past, and people need to be aware of that. In order to understand the music from the present, you have to understand and listen to the past.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, and it's actually even deeper than that, right? Like hip hop and rap of right now is sampling hip hop from 20 years ago, which is sampling to hip hop from the 70s and the 60s. And, it's sampling music from jazz and R&B and blues and all of that stuff. And, even music back then was pulling, licks and guitar licks from earlier jazz and earlier blues. Music is sort of this ever evolving thing, but there's always a thread right back to the beginning, right? Like, if you even think about bands right now that were influenced by bands in the 90s, were influenced by bands like the Beatles, and the Beatles were influenced by blues artists from 30 years before that, right? So it just keeps going back and back and back. And that's the kind of cool thing about it, is that even if it changes what it looks like and it sounds like, there's always a tie back to what used to be.
Know that you have this interest in like all the things in music and culture. Like, how much of a role did it play into your life?
It's a good question. It came to me late in life. Music, like I remember music very vividly, like from being a really young kid. I remember listening to my parents' records. And then I remember getting a tape deck that I would record songs off the radio. And then I remember discovering my dad's reel-to-reel music when he was recording music when he was my age, 30, 40 years earlier. And then I remember hating everything that my parents liked because I was a teenager. And then I remember, like finding friends who loved the same music I did. And then like music was like what brought us all together. And then I remember, turning that passion into, my 20s, which was like going out all the time, going to bars, going to concerts, going to places where music was being played. And, music becoming very social in my life. It was like what defined what a Saturday or a Friday night looked like for me. I didn't want to go and stand up, outside in -20 to get into a bar with playing top 40 music. I wanted to go to the club that was playing this band from the Maritimes who, nobody knew about, but it was super awesome. And then I remember my 30s going, I don't want to go out anymore. And I also remember being in my 30s and going, man, my parents' music was actually really good, and buying a bunch of the records that they used to own.
Uh-huh.
And so it's always been sort of a part of a certain phase of my life. Um, the arts and culture side of things for me didn't really kind of hit until university. And it was sort of a natural evolution of my passion for music by getting involved in theater and getting involved with, different organizations that were part of, for me, what was about the similarities between, music, which was my social outlet, and, theater and other art forms as being sort of my cultural outlet, was this idea of storytelling. I think, art is all about telling a narrative about a time, a place, a person, a situation. And so, that's something that I've always loved about it. And, so that was kind of what sort of sent me on my direction where I am now, which is working in, a broadcaster, but also an organization that champions arts and culture. And I think what behind all of that is just this incredible power to tell our stories and capture a moment in time. And I help to tell the story of the storytellers now. I think that's pretty cool. It's kind of a nice place for me to be.
I've always even said that with music, it has that ability to express the entire spectrum of emotions
Mm-hmm.
that that one songs could be bringing back sadness. One could be bringing back happiness, and
Mm-hmm.
for one, it could just paint a very vivid picture. So for some, it could even bring back the memory of a couple's wedding song, for
Yeah.
example.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we see this all the time at CKUA. We get emails from people saying, you played the song and I stopped in my tracks. I haven't heard it in 30 years. And I remember last time I heard it. Um, I mean, music you're right. It's emotion, right? It doesn't matter what the language is. It doesn't matter what the beat is. It doesn't matter what the rhythm is. There's something about music that just sticks with you. It imprints itself on you. It occupies a different part of your brain. And,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, think about, go back tens of thousands of years. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the ways we communicated. We didn't necessarily have the ability to articulate our thoughts and our feelings, but we could bang a rhythm.
Uh-huh.
It's always been sort of, I think it's just so ingrained in who we are. And I think that's what I love about it, is that, it has that ability to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, or have the ability to remember, a long lost friend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's something that we can take solace in too. I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that's become really clear for me about music during COVID was
Oh my
the
God.
ability it
Yeah.
had to, we heard this from our listeners every single day. It was, early on in COVID, it was, I'm scared. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what's going to happen in the world. Like, we're being told that the end times are coming,
Oh
but
yeah.
the music that you play and the music that I'm listening to makes me feel okay. And then
Absolutely.
it was, and then it went into sort of like, I'm lonely. I haven't seen my family in 3 months. I live in rural Alberta. I haven't spoken to anybody in person in a long time, but
Mm-hmm.
music keeps me company.
Yeah.
And then it's, I'm stressed out. I've been on Zoom calls 40 hours this week, and I can't handle it anymore, but I throw on some music and it's my release. Right.
Yeah.
So there's something about music that transcends anything we can possibly process. It's about letting our emotions and letting us be okay with our emotions.
Yeah. Like one of the songs I was listening to was actually "Love's in Need of Love Today" by Stevie Wonder,
Mm-hmm.
and it's off the 1976 album "Song is in the Key of Life." Just that the song was actually profound, and I was actually, I'll confess, I was actually, just in tears because of that song.
Yeah.
Just the story, because it was just spreading a positive vibe that everyone needed.
Mm-hmm.
And another the song that was spreading some cheer, like saying, like, hey, come on, we need to rebuild was "Wake Up Everybody" by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. And that goes again to show you that, like, in the time of COVID, like, these songs just offer some solace for people. Because yeah, like, in that time, like, we were all like, we were all so tense,
Mhm.
lost, scared, just not knowing what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like the songs you've brought up are not new songs. They've been around for
Mhm.
a while. So, it's a language that transcends time. It doesn't matter what we're going through. We can, music of any generation or any era can make us feel better about things. What I'm curious to see and excited to see is, what is the what's going to come out of COVID in a couple of years, because music is also an expression of time. And so I think you're going to see some pretty amazing art come out of not just music, but art in general come out of COVID. And because it's a capture of where we've been through in our lives. And I think, some really powerful stories are going to be told and some really powerful songs are going to be created, um, either because of COVID or because of what happens after COVID.
Yeah, like, it could. You know what, the funny thing that my mother and I have talked about was actually art that was created before the COVID. It was actually the movie with it was actually Matt Damon, uh, Stephen, Matt Damon, Lawrence Fishburne, uh, Gwyneth Paltrow. I think it came out around 2012.
Mm,
Um,
not sure.
it was, yeah, and it was talking about some. I think Steven Soderbergh was the no, well, actually had was the director of the movie, but it was about some viral in the
Oh,
illness.
Outbreak?
No, that
No.
not Outbreak.
The other one. There was another one.
Outbreak was in 1995.
Right, right. Yeah. But there was that. Yeah. I know which one you're talking about now. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one actually just had a spike in movie view in 2020, because it's like, oh my god, like, did did the movie director like see this happening?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think oh, in a way, there's I think the art that will be seen with COVID, well, it could even be in a form of comedy,
Mm-hmm.
because we're gonna need. I know it's cliche to see comedy is going to be something and we need. It's a major form of relief.
Yeah.
It's the best way to cut the tension.
Yeah. It's funny. Actually, I listened to a lot of comedy
Mhm.
during COVID. I think that for the same reason, it was a bit of a break, a bit of a different way of sort of exploring things. Different way of, yeah, to your point, that release that we all need. I can't beat a good belly laugh.
Everyone was wondering, how can we be funny, or can we still be funny? I
Hmm.
think that then somehow, for the comedians that were still going around, they found a way to do it.
Hmm. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, comedians are you're actually really good at finding, you know, the bright spots out of pretty dark places. So it's not surprising that they did a good job on it. But yeah, I mean, again, it's another form of storytelling, all right? It's how we see the world and it's how we convey the world back in a different way.
And you also are someone who is shaped with all this experience, just having worked with no with the Fringe, the symphony, the Edmonton symphony at the Winston Center. Now it's radio, and I've heard, I know that you participated at this interview at Grant McEwen University. You've mentioned that you had worked with mentors along the way. How have your mentors helped to define you and to be kind of help you be authentic?
That's a good question. In a lot of different ways, I think, I've had some really interesting mentors. I've never really had formal mentors. It's not like somebody who, okay, we're going to spend an hour a week kind of doing things. It's always been people that have just been available to me and help me to sort of work through problems and issues. I think, a good mentor in my experience is somebody who's been able to call me on my BS. We all think we know the answer, and sometimes we don't, and that's okay. And it took me a long time to learn that it's okay not to know the answer. I spent a lot of time in my career where I was expected to know the answer. And it was a mentor who sort of said, like, it's actually okay if you don't.
Oh my God. Isn't it sometimes a relief to just say, I don't know?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like, there's so much pressure for everyone to just know everything. And sometimes you just want to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can try to find out. For the moment, it's just, I don't know, but I can find out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's power in that. When you figure out that you can say that's very empowering. And I think it actually makes you more connected to the person looking for the answer. I think anybody who would appreciate that you go above and beyond to find the answer is somebody worth building a relationship with. Now, if that person sees weakness in you not knowing, then maybe you don't want them in your orbit anyway, right? But yeah, that was a huge power for me. And that was early on in my career where it was sort of, I've always been in jobs where I didn't come in as being an expert in the field. I came in as being somebody who had a willingness to learn and a willingness to understand. I can't play classical music to save my life. I can't read a classical music chart. I can't tell you the, extended works of Bach, but I can tell you who knows that.
Yeah.
And so when I worked for the symphony, it was like, I think part of the reason why I was successful at that job was because I enjoyed figuring out the answer as much as my donors did and as much as my subscribers did. And there's an authenticity in that can't be beat, rather than sort of being the expert. So yeah, I mean, I think that was always sort of a key lesson that I learned. I think one of the lessons that I learned from mentors is this idea that, it doesn't matter what you do, it matters who you do it with. And I've really taken that one to heart. It doesn't matter what the job is per se, but if you enjoy who you're doing it with, if you enjoy the process and the experience, then that's what matters most. You can take joy and you can take comfort and, find the things that matter to you, even if it's not like the perfect job. I think we're sort of told that there's this perfect career, this perfect reality, and, just let go and it'll happen. And I don't necessarily buy into that, but I think you can find places where a lot of that is true through the people that you work with. And that allows you to sort of be successful. I'll admit there's days that I don't want to run a radio station, but I enjoy the people I work with, and I enjoy the people that, that create these amazing programs that we do. And it's just, it all adds up to an awesome opportunity.
What I've noticed is part of CKUAs is like it's diversity in interview topic, subject matter. And when I was listening to it, like the on-air personalities would even would interview like uh, artists like Judith Hill, who was supposed to perform with Michael Jackson, but he passed away before the "This Is It" concert. There was actually Kristen Scott, who was discussing suicide and the lost the survivors, and even again there was I think there was Kathleen McGee, one of the comedians, and that variety is is just great in to being able to kind of adapt and have and it shows that CKUA is not just at addressing one avenue, but it goes into different areas.
Yeah, I think we being being a voice for music, arts, and culture. We don't, we're not a media outlet. We're not CBC. We're not commercial radio. We don't have a newsroom. All of those things. What we believe in is the power of music and arts and culture to make our lives a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we've sort of seized on is our hosts are some of the most some of the best sort of music curators going anywhere in the country. They know music better than anybody else. Their catalog is infinite. They're like walking dictionaries and walking encyclopedias of music. But we also know that music doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Like, right now there's somebody in a pottery studio listening to CKUA because CKUA, the music that CKUA puts on, it helps them to focus on their work. We know that Alberta Ballet is putting on a show about some famous musician this year. We know that arts or theater companies will do musicals. Like so music is actually the universality in all these different art forms. Music is the thing that ties a lot of them together. And so to sort of use the industry jargon, like the Alberta cultural ecosystem, to me, we're the music experts in that ecosystem, but we're also the connector to all these other art forms and all these other different disciplines and different cultures and different experiences. And we have the platform to tell that story. So we can take the music and then layer in all these other stories that we do. And that's what kind of creates this cool experience and tells, I think, a really, really compelling narrative of what Alberta is in terms of music and arts and culture. And, it's a very important story to be told from our province. It's not like there's a lot of media outlets stationed in Alberta with newsrooms in Alberta trying to tell Alberta music, arts, and culture stories. In fact, there's only a couple of them left. And I'd say that we're doing more than the other one in terms of doing that job. So I think that's, we take that very seriously. That I think what makes CKUAs unique is that we can be plugged in at a local level and tell those stories and do it with music in as sort of the soundtrack for the whole thing. And I think it makes for a pretty cool experience, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, it certainly does. And you also like the thing that you love to promote, like the culture of in Edmonton, like what's unique about like the culture of a certain place, certain city, like even like even just something as simple as just restaurants that you find only in Edmonton or only in certain city, which I'll admit that that you and I have in common.
Yeah. Well, I mean, food's another way of telling a story about a community, right? Local food is part of the local experience. So, I mean, if you think about it, the farmer that grows the chicken is playing CKUA in the barn, and then the chef buys the chicken and the chef cooks the food and the CKUA is playing in the kitchen, right? So there's a lot of that sort of, that's a pretty simplified way of looking at it. But, food and music and art and even sport and recreation is an expression of a community. It's what makes a community a place that you fall in love with, are those types of things. We can we can complain about potholes all day long and tax rates and all that stuff, but if we feel like the place we live in is creating a quality of life that we love, then it's then we're willing to pay for the potholes and the tax rates because we're getting something out of it.
Yeah.
So I think food's a great example of that. There's lots of different things, it's sort of, but I think it's anything that has to do with what makes the ordinary extra fun. That's what I think makes for a really powerful and really strong city. And I think what's really interesting about Edmonton is because we're so north and we're so isolated in a lot of ways, is that we have to do it ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We're not waiting on a layover from Vancouver to come spilling into Edmonton to do things. We've got to make a destination that people want to come to, and we want to make a city that we're proud of. And so it's kind of up to our own devices. And so I think because of that, we do things that are pretty special, because if we don't do it ourselves, nobody's going to do it for us.
Exactly. Like where the city that has like all these great biking trails, where the city that has the jazz festival, the city that has the Louisiana Purchase restaurant, which between you and I, great restaurant. Oh my God. Don't know if you've been there.
I have, yeah. I've
God.
had some catfish in my time.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And you know that the Satisfaction play was actually named after the Rolling Stones. Yeah, I think they went. Yeah, they went there. I think what, in the 90s?
97.
97, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the year they opened the Winspear Center, and the Rolling Stones booked the rehearsal space in the back of the Winspear Center, and nobody was allowed to go in there while they were rehearsing. And then they went in after the Stones had left, and the place was just destroyed. They had to, it was just so much smoke. They had to clean all the curtains and like fix the floor and clean up all the bottles and stuff. So no surprise there.
Oh my God. Nice. Yeah. Well, I'm learning a little bit of the history there, and everyone is, and that's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of history in Edmonton. We just don't tell it very well. We don't tell our story very well.
Yeah, exactly. And I just wanted to go back to that, just that little bit about being about the mentorship, like because I've talked about like you having mentors, but if you've had a chance to kind of formally or informally mentor other people, what would you say you would like to be your legacy as a mentor?
I don't know. I've never really thought about that. That's a really good question. What would be my legacy as a mentor? I think my legacy would be people who have a better appreciation for the world around them. I think the mentors that I've worked with, well, there's two things. One, I actually believe the term mentor is a gift. I don't think you can call yourself a mentor. I think somebody has to call you a mentor. It's a gift word. So when I think about, one of the nicest things somebody ever said to me was he called me his mentor, and we'd never had a mentoring relationship before. There was never any sort of like, I'm your mentor, you're my mentee, we're going to do this and this and this. It was just somebody who learned a lot from me. And one day he said that I was his mentor, and that was pretty cool. Like he gave me a gift that I never thought I could receive. So I think, so like a legacy for me, selfishly, would be for more people to think of me like that. Not that I'm expecting to be called that, but just to sort of know that that's something that I've had that impact in somebody's life. But I think, if there's something that I can impart on people, it's, develop an understanding of the world around you. The world is such a thing now that you can't be singularly focused on something. Everything is interconnected. And so, whether you're an accountant or you're a chef, like it's the world around you that impacts what you do. And if you can take the time to appreciate it and discover it and explore it and understand it, knowing that you'll never fully understand it because there's no way you can, but at least if you try to sort of take that opportunity to understand the world around you and sort of how you can maybe play a little bit of a role in making it a little bit better. I think that's something that I always want to impart on people around me is you know be try to be a more rounded individual.
Wow. Trying to understand the world around you. That's just beautiful. I
Mhm.
love that
Well,
perspective.
you just got to take it in. There's a lot coming at us at
Absolutely.
all times.
And finally, there are three last things that I do want to know from you. What does living your truth mean to you?
Man, living your truth. What's funny is I'm actually struggling with that one right now. I'm working on this one with my therapist right now, actually. Um, I've lost a little bit of that over the last few years. I think for me, I've lost my what living my truth means because I've been so intertwined with my job and I've let my job define me rather than me living my truth and letting the job be part of what that is. So I'm really struggling with that one right now. I think, you know, to be philosophical about it, I guess that means that living your truth is recognizing that living your truth is a constant process. Um, but I think for me, it's recognizing where you are and understanding where you're going want to go, but also being okay that you don't know how to get there. I think that's sort of, at the end of the day, I don't think most of us know what the path in front of us is. And so living your truth is sort of being open to discovering that path as you go.
So it's like ever going growth, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit
Growth.
of growth, but also sometimes it's okay not to grow. Sometimes I
Oh,
think it's okay just to kind of like stay where you are and spend some time on where that is before you go. That's the conversation I've been having a lot with my therapist right now is,
yeah.
I was constantly growing and changing direction that I never really figured out who I was.
Mhm.
I was constantly sort of recreating myself and reinventing myself just by virtue of where my life was taking me. And so now I'm in this point where I'm like, I don't really know who I am. So my
Mhm.
truth is to be discovered.
Yeah. All right. And the second question, how would living your truth and being authentic make you a better person?
Hmm. Um, well, I think, being authentic, living your truth, I think it makes you a better person because you're straight up with people. And I don't mean that in the like point blank kind of way, but I think in the way of when you speak from a place of understanding. When you listen, you're listening with both ears and with full intent. Like to me, that's authenticity. It's that ability to connect with somebody without any pretense. And so I think for me, that's a thing that I always try to sort of deal with is, we all put on a bit of a facade, right? When we're dealing with people we don't know, or dealing with the outside world, or even with people we know really well, there's always a little bit of a facade. So I think, you know, sort of breaking down that barrier and trying to find those connection points that aren't sort of forged through some sort of falseness. And I think, it's a very lofty comment and a lofty experience, but I think it's pretty true. I think, for me, being authentic is knowing that I don't have to be perfect, which for me is a really hard challenge for my own self esteem.
And last but not least, what advice would you give to someone looking to embrace who they are?
Um, do the one thing that I don't do. Take a lot of time to stop and reflect. I think there's a lot to be learned from, stopping the hamster wheel that we're all on and kind of going, and just taking that time very deliberately to just stop and, question the world a little bit and to sort of really think about who you are and who you want to be and that type of thing. It's yeah, as I said, like that's the journey I'm on right now, is to kind of figure that out. So but I think it's different for everybody. That's what it is for me. I think for some people it's some people that just know exactly what it is supposed to be, and that's what they need. But for me, I think it's okay to be living in a little bit of ambiguity. I think that's what allows you to sort of figure out the trail that's hidden inside the fog.
Words of wisdom from Marc Carnes. You can, if you go to www.ckua.com, you can find different ways to stream radio from your computer or from your phone. You can even find info about how to about their personalities, and you can follow CKUA through social media. Marc, it has been a pleasure to have you on today's show. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for reaching out.
And to you, the listeners and viewers, thank you so much for being here. And remember, stay true. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you subscribe and like, and you'll keep up to date with the content on my channel.